Alright, YouTube. Today I want to talk a little bit about, I guess, a serious subject. Mainly whites, whites here in America. Now, like a lot of people, when I was growing up in the South, like some of the subjects matter that I would like conversate with my parents and stuff, and they would say, "Well, that's all, white folks, concerned. That don't really pertain to us." And I was wondering, I said, "Well, what?" Because it should be, mainly everybody concerned. So anyway, I was kind of like taken aback by, by when parents say stuff like that. So, oh man, why did they say that? But as you grow older, and I guess you kind of come to learn about different things. Well, anyway, it appears here in this country that it's a separation, between the whites and the blacks here. A lot of the cities here in this country are segregated. A lot of the neighborhoods in the city are segregated. It wasn't always so, say when the country first started, but after the Civil War, I mean, a lot of the things, such as segregation, really started to take a hold. I think it was mainly planned because there was a lot more white slaves brought to this country than blacks, and the black slaves was a lot more expensive because they had to be shipped, and it was just they were just the value of the black slave was a lot more higher because the white slaves that came over from England, probably a couple more countries too, they was mainly, it was a lot cheaper, mainly because they was brought up, they was mainly gathered up and shipped over for mainly supposedly violating crimes and stuff, mainly just being on the streets, the poor, stuff like that, and then they just gather them up and just ship them over it and sell them to bondage and slavery. But like when I was going to school, I didn't necessarily want to be like segregated as, separate from, the other kids, especially the white kids and people like that. Mainly because I was like, brought up in like a neighborhood that was, mainly mixed. I had a lot of white friends at an early age. So, I didn't want to like discard them just because, we're going to school now, I got to discard all my white friends and stuff like that. So, anyway, I kind of like was hesitant about discarding some of my white friends. when I mainly in junior high and high school and stuff. Well, we mainly integrated, I think, when junior high and high school. Yeah, junior high, I think, it really integration started in my hometown. So mainly, a lot of the black kids, they didn't necessarily want to associate with the white kids, when I was in high school. Mainly, mainly because they felt that, that the whites felt that they was a lot better than them and stuff like that. Mainly because of segregation. The town was segregated, and you couldn't go to this. You couldn't shop, and you couldn't go to the restaurants and stuff like that. You couldn't go to. Well, it was all just a big mess. But how segregation really got started here in this country, I think, was through the Atlanta Compromise with Booker T. Washington. Was a black guy. I think he really instituted segregation in this country, more so than the whites, because the majority of the whites were slaves in this country. They were brought over as slaves. But a lot of the blacks in the South, they actually owned slaves. So when you come up with a compromise after the Civil War, who instituted like the slavery, the segregation, is a black guy, Booker T. Washington. He's writing the Atlanta Compromise, saying that okay, it's all right to be segregated. I think the main thing segregation was to elevate the white slaves, because the black slaves, it was like after the Civil War, that was over with, as far as like importing a lot of black slaves, that was gone, done. But a lot of the whites, they continued to bring over, because it was right there in the country. All they do is just sweep them up, put them on some boats, and because the black slaves, they was a lot more expensive. But the part was that the black slave master, it kind of like cut him out of the whole thing, as far as like owning slaves. He could probably own a business or something like that, and hire some whites to run his, to work with him and stuff like that. But I think the main thing was to try to elevate, not necessarily elevate the white slaves, but to try to get them to become, I guess, more helpful toward the white economic system in the country at that time. As far as segregation and as far as segregation, white privilege, and all this sort of prejudice and hatred and stuff that's going on in this country, it's not really helping the whites out that much, as far as like the middle class whites. Probably the people that's on a more higher economic status, they might benefit. But because the economic system is so unstable in this country, look back at 2008 when the real estate debacle happened. I think going forward, though, the whites are going to have to realize that the segregation was only put in place to try to like keep them down more so than blacks, because blacks they would always have options, you know. As far as whites, I mean, where can you go, you know? Especially you're not very educated, and a lot of the whites here in this country are not very educated. I mean, they would rather, you know, grab a $40,000 a year job working civil servant, you know, being a cop, than to really try to apply themselves and get a PhD. Yeah, I don't see. I don't think really the whites, they really see the benefits of getting an education, and you know, a good education like a PhD. They don't necessarily see the benefits of it, because mainly they see everything as in black and white. Oh, this guy, the black guys, they over there. We got to stay over here, you know, and stuff like that. And also like the riots and stuff like that happened like in Baltimore and in St. Louis area. You know, while a lot of the whites, they can't relate to that. They can't relate to like police brutality, because they was always, you know, I guess instilled that the police are part of society that benefit, you know, people and stuff like that, instead of on the other end of it, where blacks are mainly say oppressed, you know. The whites are saying, all right, you black guys over here, you're thugs, you know, this and that, you know. And that's the way I guess whites view things, as being on a positive side than necessarily as far as the police is on the negative side. I think going forward, mainly whites, mainly the middle class whites, are going to have to come to terms with education, as far as like educating themselves on different things, on how the country was started, instead of, you know, just accepting some of the things that's actually some of the historical facts that's in history books that are not necessarily historical facts at all, but mainly just, you know, just propaganda. Mainly because the elite here in this country, they don't want to tell people that they was actually, especially white, was actually, you know, slaves brought over as slaves. They want to say, oh well, only the black people were slaves. You white guys, oh, you wasn't slaves at all. Oh no. Well, matter of fact, that Constantine actually enslaved all the whites in Europe. You know, so how can you say, you know, that you weren't necessarily a slave? You know, a slave is like somebody that's like put in bondage and, you know, made to work. You know, anytime you are made to work, you know, that's slavery. You know, as whites, you know, they was in Europe, they was enslaved by Constantine, enslaved the whole. They was brought over here, put in bondage over here. Here in this country, mainly the Irish people and a lot of more of the Europeans was totally enslaved.